Hi, my name is KD. Welcome to part 3 of the session on OCI Events Service. In the first two parts of this session, we looked at what are events, what is the OCI Event Service, why do we need events. We looked at the core concepts of the OCI Event Service, events, rules, and actions, uh, and some of the features of the service, and we looked at the IAM policies that you need to work with the OCI event service. We uh, discussed the metrics that you can get from the service as well as some of the design principles that you need to keep in mind when you are using OCI events. In this session, I'm going to start by taking you to the OCI console and showing you how to use the OCI event service by creating a rule from scratch. I'm going to discuss some of the use cases that you can implement using OCI event service, and finally give you an end-to-end demo of the service in action. I'm going to skip the first few slides because these were already covered in part 1 and 2. I would encourage you to go back and review those sections if you want the full background. All right, so let's start by going to OCI console and creating a rule. So I have logged in. The event service is under the application integration part. The first thing you need to do is to choose the right compartment in which you want to work because it's specific to the compartment. And then you can, I have an existing rule in place, but let's create a new rule. Let's say the use case that I want to highlight is that when an object is uploaded to a bucket, I want to put that event in a stream, or I want to get notified. Uh, in the first thing we need to do is to give it a name. So let me call it object upload to uh, to a notification action. Let's choose the service name and then the event type. If you don't choose anything, you will see all the different events across all the services that are supported. But if the 6 services we discussed are database, compute, there's object and block, volume storage services, networking, and notifications. In this case, I'm going to choose object storage service and then the corresponding events that you can write rules against appear. Um, let's see, I choose this one. You can uh, add conditions to it. Let's see that I'll add an attribute and I'll say my bucket name, and I have a bucket name already that I provide here. And then the action can be sending it to the OCI streaming service. I have a streaming service called FN Stream, so I can add there. I can add multiple uh, uh, kind of actions as well. So I have a notification topic set up as well, so I can add these things here. What you can also do is validate your rules. This is a nice nifty little tool that you can leverage to make sure your rules are acting as expected. And you can also look at some example policies. In part 2, we looked at what an event actually looks like. It's based on the Cloud Events standard from CNCF. This is the event envelope which contains a lot of useful metadata on the version and the event ID, etc. There's a timestamp. This is a JSON, and then there is, along with the envelope, there is the payload, which contains relevant data about the resource that generated the event and the event itself. And you can write filters against it. In this case, bucket name for me is event-demo, but this gives you a good example of what different objects, different kind of events can actually look like. All right. So I just created this rule. Now let's go back to our presentation. So there are a lot of different use cases that can leverage OCI Event Service in a nice manner. The key goal here is automation. Anytime one of the six event source services that we looked at, something happens or an interesting event happens there, you can take an action, and the use cases can be anything from security operations, IT operations, or even multi-cloud based on following the same cloud event protocol. You can take actions in more than one cloud environment as well. It could be examples. We're going to look at three examples, but the thing I want, the distinction here is there could be other kind of event-driven architectures. There is for which rely on events that work at the application tier. So applications also emit events, and you can do things like event sourcing kind of architectures as opposed to client-server architectures. And all those application level events can be stored in the OCI streaming service, and then you can act on those. That's beyond the scope of this discussion because this is related to OCI event service and the six kinds of services that currently emit events that you can write rules on. Over time, you can expect more and more services to get included, both as event sources as well as on the actions side. I'm talking about these event sourcing patterns for completeness of information, not necessarily related to OCI event service for right now. But let's look at some examples. The first one shows that an autonomous transaction processing instance is requested when its provisioning is complete. A create instance has happened, and this event, if you can write a rule in the event service like the example I gave you, and then write the actions. The actions could be you can invoke a function, and this function is can do things like running some custom scripts to create schemas or to import some useful data into your ATP database to create tables, etc. So this is really good from automation point of view. And the same event can have an action that leads to notifications by email or notifications using the OCI notification service can send PagerDuty based notifications, or it integrates with Slack as well. And you can also have notifications via the custom URLs with HTTPS endpoints. So this shows you an end-to-end flow of a useful architecture pattern. Quickly, a couple more, related to IT operations or DevOps or security kind of use cases. On the top, you see that when a compute instance is created, it can lead to you can write a rule against it, and that event can now invoke a function, and this function can now check that the instance is complying with all the security rules that you might have. For example, does it have public IP, or if it's in a public subnet, etc. And if it complies with it, it's well and good. If not, then you can act on it, and for example, you can even kill it, right? So it gives you uh, an automated manner of making sure that when a developer in your team is launching a new resource, so that it complies with the policies that you want it to comply with. Uh, Another example is your logs in when they are uploaded in your bucket in object storage service. It can trigger an event, and based on that event, you can now use a function to integrate with the third party applications like Splunk, or you can actually send these logs to the streaming service, and from there you can run analytics on top of it using an Oracle service, or a third party service as well. So these were just a couple of quick examples. You can think of any other events that are interesting to you, and then any actions that you can take to automate or do useful operations on these OCI resources. But the demo I want to show today, it involves writing a rule that when an instance is launched or terminated in your OCI tenancy, uh, it launches, or it invokes a function, and this function then creates a new object storage bucket. And this bucket, for example, can be used for logging information for your data. In this case, I'm just going to show that launching an instance creates a corresponding new object storage bucket. I'm also going to show that this creation can integrate with notification service, and you can get an email that the instance was created or terminated. And finally, this event can be sent to the OCI streaming service, from where different consumers can then act on this event. So let's go back to the console. I have pre-baked uh, a lot of this uh, demo in the interest of time, but this is the uh, compartment I'm going to work on, and this is the rules I have. And this rule, the events matching this rule, are instance launch and instance terminate. When these things happen, I take three different actions. The first action is to launch a function. This function actually creates an object storage bucket. I have another action that sends a notification via email using a FN demo topic I've already created. And the third one is I have a stream in the OCI streaming service to which this event is also sent. So let's go and create a new instance. Let's create an instance. Let's look at the name. It's called 1319 in the end. That the default name is the is the time at the end. So it's 1:19 p.m. my time in this case, for example. But let me quickly launch something. I'm just not going to use it, so I don't really care much about um, the values that I give here. But the instance is now provisioning, and we can look at some of the related services in the meanwhile. You can go to developer services, and there is uh, functions service here, and this is the function that I've already uploaded. You can go to the integration service, and you have the uh, notifications using the topic called FN demo that I've already created, and it sends an email out. And once there is some activity, you can see past activities are showing up in the metrics portion. And then finally, I have the object storage bucket. And once the event service rule matches and the function is invoked, it should create a new bucket here shortly. So let's go back to the instance provisioning page and see how we are doing. So the instance just came up. So let's see that if that instance coming up created an event that was already logged by the event service or not. Okay, I just see that right now an event was actually invoked, and it shows there are 3 actions associated with it. So let's see the actions, what these actions did. Let me go back to the object storage service, and you can see that my function has already invoked. It created a brand new bucket with 1319 at the end. Let's go to the uh, a notification service in this case, and we can look at the metrics, and you see that a notification was already sent. And then the third service is the streaming service. In streaming service, I have this stream, and this stream should have some data. You see that the metrics are coming in that yes, at this timestamp, the there was a event that was created. All right, so that brings us to the end of this session. We looked at the OCI event service, and we looked at rules, how to write some rules. We looked at the 3 different kinds of action resources that you can invoke. We looked at some of the common use cases that can leverage the OCI event service, and we looked at an end-to-end demo of automation using the OCI events service. Thank you for your time.